beautiful people. Welcome back to the Evolving Men Summit, the summit for a wholehearted and grounded masculinity. Today, I'm talking to my friends, Benjamin Paul. This is going to be fun because we usually talk in German, so it'll be different for us to be speaking in English. So I've known Ben for quite a while, actually, because so Ben had a blog quite a few years ago already that got really popular in Germany, especially among young people who were looking for finding more of their own way instead of going down the downtrodden path. So his blog was kind of about quitting university, or that was Ben's story, quitting university and starting to do his own thing. And so I was really inspired by the content that he put up because I found it really courageous. And then he actually offered something more specific to supporting people in exploring their own path, which was a project called Find Your Own Way, which had an online element, but then there were also a few workshops. And that was basically a year ago, and we met at one of those workshops almost a bit more than a year ago, actually.
Yeah.
And yeah, for me, it was there was an interesting switch from, wow, there's this big internet person and now I'm meeting him live and like all this nervousness being present, but then just feeling a really deep connection in the way that you are exploring life and the sensitivity that you bring into life and your willingness to really explore what is true and alive in this very moment. So there was something from the time that we met that felt really resonant for me. And yeah, lots of excitement in that. And yeah, grateful that we've been exploring together now for the last year, mostly virtually, but just keeping in touch and supporting each other. You also supporting me in this project. Yeah, that was a bit of a longer introduction than I had planned.
It's wow, it feels to me it feels longer than a year in a way. Like I was surprised when you said it's just a year ago and it feels yeah, I'm happy to be here and I'm very I think this was the most touching and also grounded introduction I have ever gotten in a summit.
Nice. Yeah, you have quite some experience with summits, so
yeah, a little bit maybe, but still I'm nervous and I'm excited to explore with you what comes up today.
Yeah. So especially in in recent times, let's say in the recent 1-2 years, your explorations have turned a lot to this kind of inner exploration, to explore your inner spaces, to explore the intricacies of trauma, how it's affecting us, and this really subtle inner work, becoming ever more subtle in what is going on inside of our nervous system, learning to hold space for it, finding people who you can relate to on this really, really subtle level, which I think, is something that is not, it's really not mainstream to do that. And I think this could be a good starting point for our conversation, because this kind of subtlety that you like to explore and that we also explore when we're in touch with each other, this kind of very moment to moment based, what are you experiencing right now, what are the triggers that are coming up, and to be in this kind of awareness where everything is allowed to arise, and I'm not trying to manage so much as to just be witnessing it and be present with it and be in relationship through my experience with other people. So this kind of exploration is obviously not what we associate with traditional masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious how it ties together for you, being a man, being in a male body, and being also born with a very strong sensitivity.
Mm-hmm.
What's your experience with these two? What have been your challenges, but also how do you see them actually, supporting each other or coming together?
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I feel like, by the way, I feel really seen. Like, it feels really good to listen to you. And I mean, obviously, and I don't know how much of my process you have witnessed in the years before, like the last year. And also some of it I haven't shared like with the internet world, so it's not as yeah. And yeah, of course, I did have or still have a process going on with this seemingly how do you say, like it's contradiction between a very strong sensitivity and being a man. So that's for a long time, that was something that really I was really struggling with, and I was really comparing myself a lot to men who seemed much more masculine or who seemed much more strong or had much bigger bodies or muscles, for example, or who had deeper voices than I have, or stronger voices. And yeah, that has been a struggle. And also, what has been a really big question for me was this element of like of power, maybe, or of life force, or where does my energy, my life force, my strength come from? And I think I also like almost always felt that it doesn't have to do with like just muscle strength or like pumping and like being like this. Like that's good to have that element also, or like including it in the experience. And it's something I'm starting to integrate more and more slowly. And but as you said, I like the subtle energy, like qualities. And I feel like there was some moment in the last years when I realized actually in my deepest vulnerability, like in my deepest fragility in a way, that's where like where something opens and there's a power coming through that's not of this world in a way. And it's like, and you can even feel it when I'm talking, like I can feel it in my body when I'm talking about it. It's like there's like my hands are shaking a little bit, and I can feel this like rush of energy is going through my body, and it's like and so I think I've been very curious about this life force, like that I can't do in a way. I can't. It's doing me, and I can become more aligned with it. And that's, I think, the process I'm in. And that's where also trauma comes in, because trauma is basically, if you look at it energetically, it's basically an energy block where there's like energy wants to flow and wants to express and wants to come in and manifest in the world. And trauma is just like for example, an area in the body or in the nervous system where my energy system and the world are not connected, and so energy can't flow. And by doing trauma work, for example, or developmental work, we can release those blocks, and then this life force can come through more fluidly in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what strikes me the most in what you're saying is the difference between what we usually associate to being powerful, and it's a lot about doing. It's a lot this kind of I am in charge, and the force that you're describing is more of a, I stop holding back and then it's something way more powerful than I could ever create is able to flow through me.
Yeah. Yeah, and what comes up when I listen to you or when I feel into it is like this level of the soul. Like I started doing like how do you say, inner work. I started doing it, I think, in 2013 or so, like really actively. And I think contemplating I started when I was still at school, like the last part at school. I was trying like contemplating about life and what to do after school, and so I think in the first years of my um, inner work, I was really busy with my individual self, and I was really struggling with depression, and I was like really trying to be like be like how do you say, be better in some sense.
Yeah,
Improve, yeah. And I still think that's really important to work on this level. It's like, and also what has been really important experience for me was when I had like in 2016, at the kind of peak of a depression episode, I had an opening experience where like some people have these experiences on LSD, for example, or after they meditate for a long time, they have like, and suddenly like the whole world opened up to me, and um, I was in that state more or less for a couple of weeks. So it wasn't just like just a couple of minutes, but I was like in that for a couple of weeks, and since then I feel like I have really strong connection to my, not all the time, but to like something I would call the soul, which is to me a transpersonal level of energy, and yeah, so I've been, I think that's what we're talking about when we talk about like this energy coming through. It's not just this this, but something coming down from some higher levels, so to speak. And it's also something I've been struggling with. I was just talking about it yesterday, that I feel when I tune into, and that's, for example, something that everyone who's listening can do with us, for example, now, like tune in if we can get a sense of our soul, like tune into that. And when I tune into that, I get a feeling of really like a vastness. It's really vast, and also it's really fast. Like my like like speed in there. And so what I experience a lot is like this friction between the speed I know my soul has, or like the manifesting potential that it has, and what I can actually manifest in the world, because that's still two things. So yeah. I feel like I have like a car that has 7,000 horsepower, for example. That's a little bit exaggerated. Let's say I have a car that has 500 horsepower, and I can only use 50. So the integration work I'm doing on this body level pretty much helps me to slowly be able to use more of the horsepower that's actually there.
Cool. I'm just reminded of Anthony Thompson, who you also know, who I was talking to a few days ago, and he just described really clearly these different stages that I'm just reminded of right now, which is there's the awakening to something bigger that I am, so to come to a certain degree out of the conditioning of who I was told that I am. And so this has this capacity of, or this element of realizing the vastness. But then it's another step to embody that, like to bring it to life, So one
Yeah.
is, wow, there's a potential to be so much more than I thought I could be, but it's a whole different level to actually bring that to life.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, as I'm saying this, I remember us talking about this as well, and I remember some Facebook post he did about this as well, how this is something that we need more people to understand, and to understand that it's one thing to realize your potential, but it's, if you want to make it real in this world, to actually do the work, because so much of the potential right now is not being expressed because of this gap between what we know is possible and what we can actually bring to life through our bodies. And that this is an element where there's work that is part of it. It's like
Yeah.
it takes consistent action to be able to bring your potential to life, and that we need more people with a spiritual connection, sensitive people, to develop this capacity to, as you were saying before, to open up for this bigger force to come through, because that will contribute greatly to change, to the world that we actually want to live in.
Yeah. And I think it's actually the only way. Like Thomas Uber, one of my like really important teachers, he says that the only way we can solve the problems that we have in this world is actually to be able to really look at it from a higher perspective.
Yeah.
Like we need higher consciousness. And that's something I've always come to like slowly have come to understand, that we need, like that's actually the next developmental step in human evolution, like that we kind of live more from, or more and more people live more from a higher consciousness than from their um let's say conditioned self.
Can you describe a bit more the difference between the two as you see them?
I like it how Thomas describes it. Like actually, the information that comes from my soul or from higher consciousness is actually something that really has a future. Like it's because much of what we're seeing today in today's world is actually just the repetition of the repetition of the repetition of the repetition. Like where the past that we had as humans, and the like the pain and the wars and everything, and also our childhood experiences that we experienced, that we're experiencing them again and again in a certain form. Like for example, we have again and again we end up in the same relationship dynamics, for example, or we end up with the same, like we end one relationship and we think the next one's gonna be better, and when we have a new partner and the same thing, the same issue is there again. Half a year later, we're like, what the fuck?
What is wrong with all those people out there?
Yeah, what's wrong? I need another one. That's also what I've been doing. So nothing that I'm free of. Like that's um, so I think being able to consistently live from a higher consciousness is actually means actually I'm able to be like to be living from the future.
Mm.
Because like also what I have, the information I have in my soul is in like a kind of a code and a set of information that wants to, that something in there is new and is unique and is new to the planet. Like nobody but I can bring this. Nobody but you can bring that set of info that's in your soul code, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that's actually the like the contribution to the evolution. like to real evolution. Because then something totally new, it's actually it's really new what comes in. It's not, we don't have it now. It's like it's new. So
Yeah.
and that's really exciting, I think.
Yeah.
And also to be able to be living that on a consistent level, I think it needs a lot of integration work to really own my shadows and be like, it's a process of purification and integration, I would say, so that my body becomes more of a, yeah, kind of an empty, more and more of an empty vessel for that energy to manifest. And if that happens, it's actually just it's nothing it happens by itself in a way, because when the energy embodies, it's there, and as soon as it's in the body, it's not a question anymore. So because it's there, and then it's here, and then it starts doing its thing, and we do new projects, or we create a workshop, for example, that hasn't been created in this way before, or we do, yeah, just innovation comes to this planet through us.
This makes so much sense for me. Like things are clicking in my mind around. So first of all, these moments that I experience, or these time frames where I feel like I can clearly feel the difference between just repeating patterns, and it doesn't feel very fulfilling. It's like something feels kind of, well, it's not very exciting.
Yeah.
But then there are these times where I'm in the flow of something, or something is happening, and I'm realizing on some level, this is new and this is not predictable. Like there's an alertness that comes with that, like, wow, actually all of life is kind of like this. I start seeing just the magic of this unfolding of something that I cannot understand, but I can be part of it. And like, I am part of it. It's not I can be, I am an expression of that. And also where things like intuition come in, that what you were saying before about when I'm connected to my soul, I'm living kind of from the perspective of my future. So then sometimes impulses will come that that my mind will not be able to understand, because it doesn't fit the past.
Yeah.
So it takes these kind of leaps of faith to say, okay, I'm going to trust that, and I'm going to follow that. And I don't know what will come.
Yeah.
And that, yeah, now it makes a lot more sense for me why we talk so much about, trust your intuition and go into the unknown, because everything known will be a repetition. We'll just be repeating the patterns.
Yeah. And I like that you say that it's not something that's like only reserved to people who do like a lot of meditation or who have big opening experiences. It's actually something everybody experiences. Like, we all have these moments where we feel suddenly something drops and we like, oh, we have this new idea, or we feel really inspired, or we feel like in a flow state.
Yeah.
or like, or we've experienced something in relating with another being, with another person, that feels new in a way that we haven't experienced that before. And I think all of those are like glimpses or like signposts to what's possible.
Yeah. And for me, it's the fact that this is what feels most exciting, to be in these moments where something new is happening. To me, it points to the notion that we're here to expand, to learn and grow. Like, this is when we feel most alive, when we're in this process of integrating new things instead of just repeating. Like, this is when we really come alive. It's like, oh yeah, it's like this, yes, this deep,
Yeah.
and then that, as you said before, it's like when that is felt, there are no questions about this. It's not like, am I doing the right thing, or is this like really, is this the decision I want to go into? It's such a tangible experience in my body that these questions don't have any they don't pull me in anymore
Okay, that's cool.
in these
Because
moments.
yeah, in these moments, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm free of these questions. I'm just constantly channeling my soul on.
Yeah, yeah. Because just right now, I'm struggling with like my doubts and like I'm thinking about moving cities, and that brings up a lot. Like, where does this actually come from? This pull to move to another city, and what does it stir up in me? Like, what does it touch? And so that's actually another part we could like touch, or like that's very dear to me.
Hmm.
So it's not only this, like I really love talking about these higher levels, and like I feel kind of familiar with that stuff, so to speak, in a way. And also what I find now in my process to be really helpful or to be really important is to really become human, and to really um, like Thomas Hübel, he likes to say that we cannot climb up the mountain without being able to be in the village.
Hmm.
So we can only climb up the mountain if we include all the village life, and if we are able to be in life, like in the city, in this human messy experience.
Hmm.
I think only then we can, like from a really integrated perspective, we can really live, or yeah, from these higher levels.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's
Is there?
something also that sometimes makes me a little bit mad when I look into the spiritual world, where people they say lots of smart things, and they feel like they're just meditating and stuff, and I feel like this, like to me, I've been, it's also very messy, but it's really empowering, and it's really grounding to really deeply look at my humanness and at my relatedness to life and to other humans. And also that brings up, like it brings up everything. It means like everything comes up,
Yeah,
all the information that has been stored in my cells, and that's not a nice experience,
yeah,
but
totally.
it's necessary,
Yeah.
and I feel it's
To me, the way what you're describing and the metaphor that you brought with the village and the climbing, for me, the difference is, am I climbing because I'm running away from the village?
yeah,
Like there's
yeah,
something that I feel is wrong about the village, and that's why
yeah,
I'm climbing up.
yeah,
And that has a different energy. It has more of a rejecting something that is, instead of being able to expand what is or build upon what is. I think that's a big difference. And to me, it sounds like that's what you're describing too. Also, fully understand why the village, like why the village life is important, because I think we
hmm,
don't see much of why it's actually there. And so when we don't see that, it's hard to build upon it without rejecting it.
right, yeah,
Mm.
yeah, that's essential, yeah,
And that's where the shadow work that you were talking about comes in, like this really messy uh, human things that come up in relationship and just all together and being in the society that we are in. There's just lots of uncomfortable stuff coming up.
yeah. Then it's not nice to find out where I'm actually rejecting life in myself.
Mm.
It's not a nice experience to see that, or to experience that. And at the same time, it's really, it's also logical in a way, because I feel like how we grow up as children and how many of us, we were able to relate to our parents, we needed to resist in some areas of our development.
Hmm.
And so it's also helpful to look from a point of compassion. Like that's really helpful to me to look from a point of compassion to my resistance, and to see that it was helpful and it was needed for me to resist something, to be like this.
Yeah.
And to go there where that was needed, and to see myself there, and then also see that's where my power is in. Like when I can see this, and when I can become one with that energy, I can see, okay, that's my power, that's where my power is, and I can use it now. From an adult perspective, I don't need that anymore so much. Maybe I still need it a bit in some cases, but it's maybe not as much as I needed as a child. And then I can slowly take that back in, and I can go for something.
Yeah. Yeah, and to see the, I mean, to see the life generating impulse in these reactions that, especially as children, we have in situations where we don't know any better. Like that's the best way we can deal with the situation. And to, I mean, I'm thinking a lot about the Peter Levine, how he talks about trauma therapist, how he talks about basically we need to integrate these experiences. We need to like fulfill the motion, give space so that this protective motion can be fully expressed, and then it's not needed anymore. But the problem is when there is this motion and it gets stuck somewhere,
Yeah.
and then we're basically constantly in the state,
Yeah.
obviously mostly not aware of it, and then obviously our energy gets blocked by this. But the
Yeah.
impulse itself is not wrong in any way, or that it should not be avoided. In fact, that's actually what is mostly making it, getting it stuck when we reject or repress these kind of natural impulses to protect ourselves.
Yeah. And we need safe spaces to do that, because it's not so easy to just be there with that in normal culture. That's actually something I feel I will maybe contribute to also, or have been contributing also to. And that's also very important for my process, to create spaces where these actions can be, where it's safe enough that our nervous system releases this energy.
Yeah.
Because when we walk through our daily life, we are like, many people are in a state of holding energy, like, and only when the nervous system can relax and feel safe, then this information can like surface and can be brought into contact, and then can be digested properly, and then there's space for something new.
Mm. Yeah.
And I think that's very important also for men, like also for men's work, that we as men come together in circles, and that we hold space for each other and for our processes in the power, and also like in being there with our strength and mirroring each other in that, and also in the very subtle, very sensitive parts where we, yeah, are very young maybe, and where it needs a lot of sensitivity and precise attunement. Yeah. Yeah.
There's an element that has helped me a lot in this exploration of trauma to understand it, the meaning of trauma, or to understand, yeah, maybe the value somehow of trauma, is that when I integrate a traumatic experience, it's not like finally in the state that I was in before. So I think that's sometimes what we kind of look for. It's like, I just want to feel the way I did before this traumatic thing happened.
Or before it came up, I
Yes.
mean.
Yeah. But then I will be completely transformed afterwards. Like something will have grown and developed within me that I'm at a completely different developmental stage in comparison to the trauma not happening at all. And so this is where I find the potential lies in really integrating traumatic experiences, is that maybe this is one big aspect of where our consciousness can really grow and expand, where we just can see life from a bigger perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, I love how you describe it. Resonates really with my heart. Yeah. And to me, trauma is really a path. Like trauma is, like you said, I'm not, after I have integrated the traumatic energy in myself, I'm not the same as before. I think that's where love grows, and where also our capacity to love and to hold space for life grows a lot.
Yeah.
When we are able to integrate trauma.
Yeah, and I see one.
It's like I had just this sentence coming up, like it's becoming, like, in a way, better humans, or it's actually, yeah, it's a growing into a transpersonal state also, by becoming, like, the more human I become. It's a little bit paradoxical also, like the more human I become, the more, like, I expand into something that's more than just human, in a way. I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah. The more I integrate my own experiences, the more I can see, not just within myself, but in the world as well. I can hold a different perspective. I can be very differently with other people.
Yeah.
What I wanted to name as well is, which I mean comes up a lot for me and comes up a lot with people who I relate to, who are very sensitive, also with clients who I work with, who they see to some degree their own sensitivity, and then they see a world in which this is not invited, this is not appreciated, it's not encouraged. And so it's like, well, how the fuck can I be in this world with my sensitivity? How does that work? How can I function? How can I take care of myself in this world that in many cases is not as attuned and, where a lot of the environments that I'm in are not as supportive as some parts of me would need that? How do I go about that? Well, how, because I hear these people say myself, I want to be in touch with my sensitivity, but also I want to be able to be in this world. I don't want to become like this person that cannot go out of his own house or cannot stand being in a city because it's too much.
Yeah. Well, maybe sometimes it is too much. But I think that's also interesting, because I feel like sometimes we mix up hypersensitivity or a big sensitivity with the effects of trauma. Because I think that every one of us comes with a certain sensitivity to this planet. That's different. Like everyone comes with like some people, they come to this world and they have a high sensitivity, and some have a little bit less, but that's also related to what their job is or what their purpose is. So that makes sense in a way. And then we have what you were describing. For example, I know these episodes of my life where I wasn't able to leave the house basically for days sometimes, or I wasn't able to make contact with people, or where I didn't have my shit together, where it was like really chaotic. But I think that it's important to say that that's not the fault of my sensitivity, but I think it's more an effect of a traumatic energy that's there that I haven't maybe fully integrated yet. And that's creating a distortion where something like this in my life that makes it hard to be grounded and take care of my money, take care of my relations, and maybe move smoothly through a city. But I think that doesn't need to be something that's where it's the fault of sensitivity, because I think the sensitivity it's not so much the thing there.
Yeah, I hear in what you're saying that the sensitivity is just how much information am I taking in, so how receptive am I, but that does not mean that I need to get overwhelmed automatically.
Yeah, and sometimes, like, I mean, when I look around, many people actually, they are, because of our development, many people, we are actually stuck in younger places of our development. So for example, to some people, the first traumatic experiences happen before they were born, or they happen while they were born, or they happen slowly, or like a little bit after they were born. And so what my observation is, what happens is that our nervous system kind of freezes in that state where we were when this event happened. And that can be as simple as that our mother was not able to attune properly to us. So relation is really important for us to embody, and also for our soul to incarnate. We need relation, we need attunement. Mm-hmm. And when that didn't happen, for example, then part of our system is still stuck in that kind of developmental level, so to speak. And part of our system still has that orientation from that age. So in myself, for example, there's levels where I used to have the orientation of I don't know, 3 months old, and unconsciously, of course. And also in that orientation, my system is very open, because if you see a baby that's 3 months old, like if you look them in the eyes or if you look at their bodies, they're open as fuck. Like they're really vulnerable. And so my observation is that if part of our nervous system is kind of stuck in that, or is traumatized in that kind of developmental level, then that influences also our nervous system, because then part of our nervous system is open and still wants to kind of be related in that point. So the little baby still wants the relation with someone in that level. And so that, I feel, is where like sometimes this overwhelm comes from.
So basically,
and so I have been, like, the past year I've been working with those levels, like these very young levels in myself a lot. And I can say, like, actually for the first time in my life, the past months, I'm able to actually be in life for the first time in my fucking life. Like before, it was really messy all the time, and I was like overwhelmed and boom, bum, 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 bum. Yeah. Now I could integrate a little, like, part of that energy and bring it into my body, embody it, and now it's not disturbing me as much as before. But that's not a thing of the sensitivity, but it's more a thing of the open trauma energy. Mm-hmm. And some people, they have these parts, but they're closed, so they're not affected by it. But especially people who are really sensitive or sometimes have opening experiences, then these areas are open. And if they're open, then we have this, that's my observation, and we have this thing going on. But we can do something. We can do integration work on them. We can go see a therapist who we feel comfortable with, who can see us there. It's really important that we find someone who can see us there, who can relate to us on those levels. And then we can slowly integrate them and then build a base in ourselves. And then the true sensitivity as a gift becomes more and more, like it becomes more and more a gift. Because then when we integrate trauma, we become more stable, we more in the body, and then I can use my sensitivity to do cool stuff in the world, to see people and to work with people, to, I don't know, lots of stuff. But it's a path, I would say, to claim the gift. And also the path in itself has a reward in itself, because already on that path, my love for myself, for life, grows like tremendously. And I get really excited talking about this.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. And it's also not for everyone. Like, not everyone wants to look at, or it's not everybody looks at his or her earliest childhood traumas. And that's okay also. Like, that's not, yeah.
Yeah, I like that, to turn this into a new dogma. Oh,
No.
this is what you have to be looking at, or just to create opportunities for people who feel like, this is where they're being pulled towards anyway all
Yeah,
the time.
right. It's not about like creating something that's the new thing you need to do. Like it's basically I need to follow my own energy, and if that's what I feel called to do, then I do that. And if I feel called to build bridges, I do that. And if I feel called to do interviews, I do that, and like, or a combination of it. But it's not about doing something specific to then be. And everybody knows that in herself. When I'm like following the callings I get, when I'm like aligned with my energy more and more, that's fulfilling. And then I find my place, and then also life starts to kind of align around myself more and more.
Just thought about this. Like if the inner child trauma work would become a new trend in our society. This is the new thing. You don't need green smoothies. Trauma work with your early child experiences.
That would be fun also. But it also needs to be like, I just did an evening event on high sensitivity 2 days ago, and there were like 15 people, and I shared my experience and my view on it, and that in my observation, what people sometimes say, okay, that's due to my hypersensibility, is actually, I explained like my way of seeing it, that it sometimes, or in many cases, actually has to do with traumatic experiences, or like with early trauma. And yeah, you could feel in the group that just bringing this topic up stirred up a lot in people, like, because when we talk about this, or when we bring in the energy of those areas in ourselves, it sometimes gets active in people, and it's not sometimes not so easy to deal with those energies. Like, we need sometimes a proper vessel, like we need a body that can hold those energies, or we need people who can guide us. So it's also important to be careful with that, and find good support and safe spaces so you can hold it actually, and it doesn't create more effects than necessary. And still it's challenging, like it's messy sometimes. And if we know what to do, then we can make it less messy, maybe, or more. Yeah.
There's one more point I wanted to bring in, and then I would like to bring our conversation to an end.
Yes.
So the point is around self-regulation, and as you were talking about right now, like this kind of building the vessel, which I think for sensitive people is so important, to find practices that support you in feeling your structure, or feeling the parts of you that are stable. I mean, something that also we associate with masculine qualities, with this kind of stability in which all your emotions and all the challenging stuff can be moving, and you can fully experience all the challenges that are coming up, but stay connected to something that is still grounded and that is able to hold all of what is happening. And I remember you actually telling me about this, that you were like, I think, David, this would help you quite a bit. And yeah, I mean, I'm just remembering and that's just 8 months ago. Okay. Where I was at a workshop with you and I was assisting you, but I got into my own process, and I was basically for 3-4 days completely overwhelmed. Like, I didn't get into a space of, hey, a lot is going on, but it's okay. I was like, just so overwhelmed with the emotions that were present. And so the practices that I've done, which has been, therapy work, but also meditation and stuff that brings me more into my body, has helped me so much to realize, oh, I actually have the capacity to feel the kind of stability and steadiness within me, within which everything can still happen the same way. And it's like, I can allow it more. I don't have to fight it or try to make it smaller, or go as quickly as possible so that it's finally over. It's more of a, okay, so here I am. I feel the ground. I feel my feet. I feel my butt connected to the chair. I feel how I am within a larger container. And within my container, there's just lots of stuff going on, but and it feels amazing, actually. It feels so powerful to be like, wow, there's so much going on that most people are probably cannot even see when they talk to me. And within me, there's a tornado, and I'm just like, fuck yeah. Yeah. So this is what I wanted to bring in, the practices, whatever works for the people watching. I think it's also an exploration to find out what really helps.
Yeah.
But to find these practices that help you feel more of your stability changes a lot without your processes having to become less intense. But it's just, you're able to stay present with it more. And then you realize that, yeah, maybe it doesn't have to go away for me to feel okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I was just curious, what do you do? Like, what are your practices? Maybe you can also tell us a little bit more.
Sure.
About that. And maybe something I can say is that it feels like a really masculine quality also, like to be able to be present in that storm. I like to stand in the fire.
Yeah.
And sometimes I might collapse and then I get back up and I collapse. And I mean, some things I'm not so, how do you say, fleißig, like
well, it's a consistent.
Yeah, I'm not the most consistent student, I would say. So I think I could do a lot more body work, like yoga or stuff like that. I did that for quite some time, and then also because of like these traumas coming up, I wasn't even able to do yoga in a normal studio, so I needed a really special kind of yoga, like really sensitive and slow kind of movements in yoga. And so I want to do that more, definitely. So like it's, I think basically body practices of all kinds help, where I feel my body more, where I breathe into my body, where I feel the breath, where I feel my bones, the structure, as you said.
Hmm.
And that's helpful. And then I feel also what's been really helpful for me is to have, I think, because actually that's what I learned also from Thomas. Like lots of stuff I'm telling people, like I'm talking about here, I learned from other people, of course. um, and so what I learned from Thomas is that the self-regulation um, develops in the connection to our parents,
Yeah.
or in connection with other people, in connection with other nervous systems. So through co-regulation, for example, if I'm having the experience of intense fear in myself as a child, and I run to my mother, and she can attune to me being in fear, then our nervous systems make like click, and we feel that, and then it goes, and then the fear energy can ground itself through the system of the mother. And in myself, it also wires this experience that I'm able, like like this experience of co-regulation kind of wires in my body and my nervous system, so that the more I experience the co-regulation or successful co-regulation, the more I'm actually able to self-regulate.
Yeah.
So at some point, a small fear, I don't need to co-regulate anymore, I can self-regulate.
Hmm.
And then there's maybe bigger fear that I'm not able to self-regulate, I need something else to co-regulate it with. And then my ability, my capacity to self-regulate grows also by that. And I think that's a very important practice also, that I think we can bring more awareness to, because also many, like when I look, for example, into the high sensibility group that I did, like especially for people with high sensitivity or who had early trauma experiences, self-regulation is a really big topic.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, this would have definitely been one of the points that I wanted to bring up as well. Is like having relationships in my life, or having people in my life who I'm able to relate with on this very subtle level, where there's a
Yeah.
shared commitment in bringing up these subtle emotions, these subtle shifts that are happening in my body, and being able to attune to each other on that level. So that's for sure one of the big practices in my life. I mean, which is something that we do as well in the triads with Stefan as well, who is also on the summit, that we just practice doing that. And
Yeah.
we practice to our best capacities, which are, of course, you know, on a varying degree depending on how we feel ourselves, but to just hold space for any one of us bringing up something that is not yet integrated, where there is a challenge in self-regulating, and to bring it up. And when there's enough space, it's like the nervous system learns, I'm safe in this, and then
Yeah.
something opens up, or something, yeah, it's like a new learning that happens. Yeah, so that's definitely also one of my practices. And what I like to do is that can be very interesting for many men, because it can be very easy to go into this kind of hyper focused space with any kind of practice. And I think this subtle work requires an open awareness. It's a very receptive place of non-directive space. And I see, I struggle with that myself a lot, to go into this place. And I see many, many men struggling with that, because anything they want to practice becomes a kind of, like this kind of effort. And that's in these moments quite counterproductive.
Yeah.
So what I actually do is, I'm trying to do that every day now in the, during the days of the summit. It's been quite challenging, but I've still been trying to at least have half an hour every day where I just sit down and I do absolutely nothing. Just no meditation, no planning, no, I'm supposed to feel certain parts of my body. I'm really just there. And sometimes I drift off and then I come back, and sometimes some body part feels very intense and then I'm a little bit with that. And so, yeah, I see that as also the result of my work until now, that by now in many moments, I don't need as much support maybe from the outside to deal with these smaller challenges that are coming up. And I just need to create space actually for my nervous system to process, and to not constantly feed myself with information and food and other people, but to just be and let it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so relieving to know that this is possible. It's like a resource I know I can come back to.
And it's so amazing that you that you consciously make space for that.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's really necessary, like to also in our culture to make space to digest actually all the information, all the because then like what I can see is that since my digestion has like my self-regulation, also since I take time, I don't do it like you inspired me to do that also, but sometimes I just lay down, just breathe or feel into my body and look what happens. And then I can feel like sometimes thoughts come and all the stuff that I haven't been able to digest in the moment comes up and goes through. And sometimes there's release in my, like prickling in my nervous system and energy, like released. And then there's new space, like actually it's relieving.
Yeah.
And that happens. And I think it's actually a cause that I got sick. Like sometimes when I feel like my system gets too full with energy, then I tend to get sick. I don't say that's the only reason, but I feel like I can see really a correlation between that. So I will try just sitting around and doing nothing for 30 minutes. I love that.
And then go on WhatsApp, hey David.
Fuck you, it's not working.
Cool. Oh wow, it's didn't look at the time for half an hour.
It's 3 hours. Midnight.
Yeah, this was fun and valuable for me. Also hearing some insights from you that I haven't heard before. Yeah, glad we got to have this space together.
Yeah, I love this. Yeah. It's actually so cool. Like maybe we like every time I have inspiring conversations like that, I feel like I want to do that more often actually. Because also a lot of connection happens in our brains when we exchange our research and our knowing, and then we like energy and information is transmitted, and it really also helps to integrate some of my knowledge when I'm able to share it and it lands somewhere. This actually stabilizes my own knowledge. That's really amazing. Or embodies it more. I want to talk about it to people who actually listen. Yeah, it's cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.